Vantage point. Valdosta State University has approximately 300 students who are handicapped, and of those 300, 16 are either paraplegic or quadriplegic, meaning they're confined to a wheelchair. We spoke with Ms. Maggie Vivrette of Special Services about the concerns of wheelchair-bound students and campus accessibility. We also spoke with two students who really understand the difficulties facing handicapped students because that's their daily experience. This week, Vantage Point strives to give you a different view of life on the Valdosta State campus, the issues of handicapped students.
Problems, concerns. The answers can be hard to find. Your voice may not be heard. The alternative, Vantage Point.
Hello, my name is Maggie Vivrette, and I am the coordinator of the Special Services Program. The program was originally begun in the summer of 1992. And it's been growing by leaps and bounds. We have a large number of students that we provide services to. Our program is designed to provide services for our disabled student population, and two of the mandates that we must follow are the Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. And those particular laws just state that institutions, organizations of any kind, specifically ADA, need to make sure that programs are accessible to the disabled. One of the most recent projects we've done in terms of focusing on accessibility is to provide ticketing authority to our wheelchair students. And that is the service in which the students in wheelchairs can ticket any car on campus that is parked in front of a handicap ramp, a curb cutout, or is illegally parked in a handicap parking space. Several physical plant projects have been completed, and there is a list of projects. When you have several items that need to be completed, you have to create a list, prioritize that list, and then as each project is completed, you move the next item up. So there are several things that have been completed and many things that are on the list to be completed.
The most recently completed project was the location of a ramp for use by Misty Hayes during this spring's commencement exercises. We spoke to Mr. Jim Brignotti, VSU Vice President for Business Affairs, about Misty's ramp.
I understand that basically you came into the picture on trying to get everything resolved for Misty's ramp about a month ago?
About a month ago, Misty came to my office and explained her predicament, and I wanted as much as we could do to try and solve it, but the timing was very short in trying to get a ramp in for graduation, for the stage that we use for graduation. And I went and met with Dr. Bailey and explained to him, you know, Misty's request, and he told me to work on it and see what we could do to resolve it. Right. And Misty had given me a number to call, and we were trying to contact them to see if we could get a ramp in time for graduation. Dr. Bailey, I guess, went home that night, mentioned it to his wife, and his wife, who was involved with, you know, knowing what went into our new university center, she said when we purchased the furniture for the university center and purchased the stage for there, since it was a new facility, we tried to make sure everything is ADA accessible. They purchased a ramp for that small stage. It never dawned on me to think of that as part of a use for graduation, because the graduation stage is so much larger. But we went over the next day after Dr. Bailey reminded me that that stage did exist, and it's only been on campus less than about 6-7 months, I guess. So we went over, set it up, and we figured out we'll find a way to make it work with graduation.
That's great.
And that's what we did.
Now, on the larger issue of course, obviously, Valdosta State being a very established campus, it also falls to you, I would imagine, to try to help prioritize those retrofits necessary around campus in order to make the campus more accessible. Can you give us kind of a brief view of what is next in line for retrofit?
Well, each year a list is developed with the help of Special Service Division to determine which items should be, the top priorities for us to do. As with anything, we'd love to do everything we can to make the total campus accessible, but that costs money.
Exactly.
So we elicit their help in trying to come up with a list, which we submit to the Board of Regents for approval and for funding. And just because an item's number one on the list doesn't mean it's going to get done, depending on the amount of funds.
Right, because we've still got to be able to pay for it.
That's right. We still have to be able to pay for it. So right now, we probably have about, somewhere around $850,000 on a list in order to try and get funding for.
Right.
Those types of things include a ramp for the big stage, which I don't know that we'll need to do that now because I think we found a usable solution for the future as well. But also in this building, for instance, we'd like to make the first floor accessible to all students without them having to go outside the building.
Right.
So we'd like to ramp one of the hallways.
So
That's a little over $100,000 to do that. We need an elevator in the old student union. That's about $175,000.
So there definitely is a lot that you need.
A lot of needs out there, and
the funding usually is far less than the needs are.
That's right. That's always the case. It's nice that we have the ADA law, and it's something that we're all in favor of. There's no doubt about that. But it's another thing to help pay for it.
Right.
And and we have constraints with the dollars, so we do the best we can with the funds that are available.
Okay. Jim, thanks for joining us, and good luck with the ongoing battle of trying to allocate money and projects and bring them together. We'll be right back with more Vantage Point in just a moment.
Math, a four-letter word, right? Hey, you don't need that.
Why design the world's newest chips?
When you could be flipping the world's oldest burgers. Hey, wait a minute. This is math. Geometry, algebra.
No pocket protectors here.
But you're cruising without math. Yeah, right. Take a good look.
That's math staring back at you.
It's not a problem, man. It's an answer. Call NACME. We'll tell you what you need to do.
Picasso painted the old guitarist during a period of depression that lasted 4 years. His blue period. Today, with new discoveries, 80% of depressive disorders are being successfully treated, giving hope to millions that maybe now nobody has to have a blue period.
At Vantage Point, our interest in campus accessibility at Valdosta State was sparked by Ms. Hayes and her campaign to be allowed to be on stage at the same level with her fellow graduates this spring.
Misty Hayes is a person, at least I try to be most of the time. I don't let too many things get me down. I've got a lot of patience because of all the things I've dealt with in my life. You grow up with having a muscle disease and you're different anyway, and people set you apart as being different. Well, at the present time, what they've done in the past is they have the president walk down the stairs and hand the person in the wheelchair their diploma. Well, I don't think that's exactly fair. I mean, it's supposed to be equal here, but yet they don't want to build a ramp necessarily. Well, they haven't said no, but they're leaning towards saying no is what I've heard. I just don't think that's right. It's not. I don't care how much it costs. I think I deserve it. I think all the rest of the people that need it deserve it.
To look into the future, we spoke again with Ms. Maggie Vivrette of VSU's Special Services Office.
Well, one of the things that will be done is a ramp for the graduation stage. That was on the list to be done originally, and it will be done. It's on the list for funding from the Board of Regents to be done within the next year. Also, access to the library for students in wheelchairs is on the list to be done. Access to the University Union is also on the list to be done. So there are several items that have been identified. The library entrance has been identified as one of the areas needing improvement. It is accessible. but one of the areas that has been identified for improvement, according to the input that I've gotten from our students who use that entrance, is that the time that it takes in order to allow them to get into the library. As you may know already, the student must ring a bell, which is beside the door, and then someone has to come and unlock the door and allow them in. So there is a time lapse there, and that is one of the areas of concern for a lot of the students in wheelchairs. So that's why the library entrance has been identified as one of the areas needing improvement.
Odom Library's improved accessibility is a continuing process, and Dr. George Gameau, Director of Libraries, talked about that upgrading.
The process has taken a number of years because the building was designed actually designed in the late 60s and built in the early 70s, and as such is not compliant. Of course, the laws we're talking about have been passed since that time. It has been several years that we've attempted to make changes to the building. Some we can change, some of the floor configurations, but many of the physical aspects of the building are fixed. Because the building was designed with a second floor entrance requiring the ramp, there is no way that someone who is in a wheelchair can get to the second floor easily. If you're on crutches, or it would be very difficult to get up the stairs. There really is no other easy access to the building other than using a rear door or something like that, which is less desirable. We've tried to work on our buzzer system to improve it as well as we can, although we're dealing with a fixed system. We tried to improve the visibility of the buzzer. We've worked on training individual staff on the inside of the building to make them more responsive to the buzzer. We're normally staffed with multiple people on the desks, so that presumably in most of the time one person can drop what he or she is doing and respond to the buzzer as quickly as possible. It does, however, take us time to go from the second floor to the first floor. We then have to de-arm an alarm and then physically open the door. And while this process can happen in several minutes, as you've seen, it still can be frustrating to a person waiting in a chair outside, especially if there is a delay on this end. I could have someone doing a transaction on the desk at the same time someone else is taking a phone call. If those are the only two people on the desk, it's going to take them 30 seconds to a minute, maybe slightly longer, to disengage from the task they're doing to go down and open the door. One of the early suggestions that was done for improving the access was to put an elevator type lift, an external elevator on the outside of the building that would raise someone from the ground level up to the ramp on the second level. That's feasible, but it's expensive and it's a high maintenance item because it's, you put an elevator outside and you're going to have a lot of exposure, exactly. In this climate, rain, etc., you're going to have a lot of mechanical problems. Plus, it's extremely expensive to start off with. So we've looked at other alternate type access, and this would mean things like self-actuated door openers and closures. Those are possible, and you see them at probably any supermarket, many major buildings like that. But these doors propose a certain problem because they're so large and heavy that a normal opener won't open one of those doors. So we either have to have a heavier opener or modify the doors, which then alters the building somewhat. Plus then we have to set up a separate security system for detecting material going in and out. And so as we collect the data on these different kinds of systems, then we have to compare which is more cost effective and then maybe which gives you the best access. As you know, I guess through this project you've been doing, the campus has self-identified many of the areas in all the buildings that require access, and these are all put on a hierarchical list, and they go through them as priorities are set by people in special services, and as funds become available. There are a number of things in the library that have to be changed, like restrooms, for example, drinking fountains. One of the last modifications we made was to a restroom on this main floor, but all that was we just took one staff restroom and converted it to a unisex handicapped bathroom. that essentially everyone can use. That's not the end solution. That was done as an interim solution so that people could use it easily until we could go ahead and do the rest of the bathrooms as we should. But it didn't make sense to us to wait because it could be several years, and we were inconveniencing people in the meantime. So there are some solutions like that have been done. Others that will take a little bit longer.
The one thing that has always been a problem in libraries, even for those of us that are tallish, stacks can sometimes be difficult.
Sure.
Do you usually rely on desk staff to assist in reaching those books that are out of reach? Or
yes, that will probably always in almost all libraries throughout the world be a classic problem, because the stacks were designed for efficiency, and a normal stack range is 90 inches high, and I have to strain to get there. But we try and make them as tall as we can, simply so we can accommodate as many books within a square foot that we can, and that's simply a matter of efficiency. If a person is not able to reach, they're going to have to ask for assistance. We keep a number of kick stools around, but those only work for people that are not bound in a wheelchair. So they will have to ask for desk assistance.
Vantage Point's look at campus accessibility will return in just a moment.
Math, a four-letter word, right? Hey, you don't need that.
Why design the world's newest chips?
When you could be flipping the world's oldest burgers. Hey, wait a minute. This is math. Geometry, algebra.
No pocket protectors here.
But you're cruising without math. Yeah, right. Take a good look.
That's math staring back at you.
It's not a problem, man. It's an answer. Call NACME. We'll tell you what you need to do.
Sally wants to be a surgeon when she grows up. Maybe someday she'll operate on you. Now, would you like this free booklet of simple ways you can help improve her education? Call 1-800-96-PROMISE.
Hi, reporting for Vantage Point, I'm Ed McNeil. Smoking among college students has increased at an alarming rate. Smokers here on Valdosta State campus can be seen in all areas.
More than 50 million individuals smoke in the United States. They're all feeling the ban on smoking in restaurants and other public areas, but they're also exposing themselves to several health risks. Danger is imminent even for non-smokers who are around smokers daily. Scientists have completed dozens of studies that have revealed an increased health risk resulting from the exposure to secondhand smoke. Some of those risks include lung cancer, cardiovascular disease, asthma, and other respiratory problems. We'll take a look at smoking on the campus of Valdosta State University. Reporting for Vantage Point, I'm Ed McNeil.
Picasso painted the old guitarist during a period of depression that lasted 4 years, his blue period. Today, with new discoveries, 80% of depressive disorders are being successfully treated, giving hope to millions that maybe now nobody has to have a blue period.
Math, a four-letter word, right? Hey, you don't need that.
Why design the world's newest chips?
When you could be flipping the world's oldest burgers. Hey, wait a minute. This is math. Geometry, algebra.
No pocket protectors here.
But you're cruising without math. Yeah, right. Take a good look.
That's math staring back at you.
It's not a problem, man. It's an answer. Call NACME. We'll tell you what you need to do.
Welcome back to Vantage Point. To get a more first-hand look at accessibility on VSU's campus, I accepted the challenge to spend a morning on campus in a wheelchair. I will admit that there was a little bit of early trepidation on getting rolling in a wheelchair. It had been a long time since I had done anything with a wheelchair. And one of the first discoveries was that at least the Communication Arts Department office would be okay. We simply would have to do a little bit of altering of the alphabet, obviously, since T is a little bit higher on the shelf order than the bottom. It would require moving my mailbox down lower. Also discovered that a lot of the things that I normally carry become a problem with a wheelchair. Elevators really are not a problem. All of them are set at a pretty good level for being able to get to the buttons, being able to approach and roll into the elevator. So the elevator really did not prove to be any great problem for rolling in, getting the floor chosen, and getting things moving forward. As I mentioned, trying to figure out what to do with my coffee cup while needing my hands free in order to be able to roll the chair did make a difference. Some of the doors early on did present a little bit of a problem, but most of that, I think, for me was just not really understanding how to maneuver the chair at this point. Then came the first ramp. Very short, very quick, out the back door, and the difficulty with my maneuverability, my ability to operate the chair, of being able to get over the threshold and out, and I will admit, trying to go out backwards the first time because of uncertainty about the balance point in the chair, my balance point. My first thought was, I just hope with everyone watching I don't go over backwards and land on my head. But it proved to be reasonably easy. Driveways and sharing roads with vehicles is a whole new sensation when you're down at closer to ground level, and when you have that sense of not being able to protect yourself. And then we discovered little bumps that you'd never notice when you're walking. Very low rises in the pavement. In this case, the matter of about an inch, inch and a half, was enough to stop the chair, at least at that point. I became much more conscious as the day wore on of paying attention to how smooth the sidewalk was, how smooth the road was, watching for those little small bumps that can make all the difference in the world. As I rolled into my office, I discovered that I'm not doing a very good job of dealing with accessibility. And in rolling in, I found that I have basically laid traps for a student that is handicapped, especially a student that might be in a wheelchair. Between the recycling box, the side chairs, and the trash can and the bookcase, I have basically set enough traps that if a student came to see me that was wheelchair bound, they would have great difficulty maneuvering into and around in my office to be able to sit down and have a conference with me. After I took a few moments to unload the early morning paraphernalia and pick up a fresh package, it was time to head over to the University Center and a meeting that I had scheduled there. I was finding out that doors were still proving to be a problem. Things that you take for granted when you don't have to deal with the width of the wheelchair and fitting your arms and your hands through on the wheels were a real eye-opening experience for me. And reaching back to close a door.
Okay.
There's an awesome power that can eliminate over half of our nation's defense forces. It's everywhere, and it can strike at any time. Who has this incredible power? You do. If you employ National Guard and Reserve members, you need to use your power wisely, because today, the Guard and Reserve make up over half of our country's defense. So when they need time off to serve, be a hero. Give them the freedom to protect ours.
Thousands of women will lose a child to AIDS simply because they didn't get an HIV test when they were pregnant. You see, there's now treatment that can help stop the spread of HIV from mother to baby, which gives children of HIV-infected mothers something they never had before: a chance. If you're pregnant, please get an HIV test.
And of course, as I got a little bit more accustomed to the chair, it took a little bit of work, but I did remember to find the balance point, lean back a little bit, and let gravity and the other laws of physics work for me to be able to get over some of the small bumps and humps that are commonplace on sidewalks that are old and have had roots working underneath them for a long period of time. Learning how to maneuver in a straight line took a little bit of work as well. I found myself frequently leaning, or as it were, driving one direction or another from where I intended to go. Really didn't have any trouble with street crossings. The curb breakouts were very accessible, very easy to use, and discovered that I was able to get around fairly well. The new University Center, of course, being the most recently completed building on campus, is very accessible. Did not really have any problems at all getting into and around and through any of the offices that we visited in the University Center. So I was very pleased that we were able to give that building a very high mark on its accessibility. Back across to the main campus again, and occasionally, I will admit, I did cheat a little bit. I allowed the crew to give me a bit of a push and help me along. As the morning wore on, I was getting used to maneuvering the chair, found that it took a bit less effort until I discovered some of the grades on campus that I hadn't really considered before. But there were several times going uphill that, at least for me, being unused to the chair and being unused to driving a chair on campus, I found that some of the grades were a little more than were comfortable for me. I think over time I probably would adjust to them, however. The accessibility into the library is something that, of course, is really necessary for all students because of the library's importance to students getting in. We found that they were very quick to come down, get the doors open, and let us into the building. And once we were into the library, it was off to the second floor, what most of us think of, honestly, as the ground floor of the library, and into the stacks to take a look around, and the sudden realization that for libraries, this is one thing that I don't think they'll ever be able to overcome. Obviously, books have to be put in vertical arrangements, and that means a stop at the information desk, where we did discover that for anyone who is wheelchair-bound, the library folks are very, very helpful and will make every effort to make sure there's someone to assist a student who needs help reaching to the upper shelves. Most of the problems I had with, I think, a lot of the accessible features, like the bathroom, were as much a factor of not knowing how to maneuver the wheelchair, not having been in it for a long period of time, as anything else. And, of course, another place where books factor is the bookstore in the University Union building. If a student comes in, and obviously the stairs and steps up to the textbook section are going to be problematic, do they just stop at one of the cashiers and ask for assistance, or come in?
We have elevator access.
Oh, okay.
So all anyone has to do who needs to have special access up there, just ask, because it's not a public elevator. It's designed as
more like a freight elevator, and
we're a freight elevator. It's an elevator that just isn't out in a public area.
Oh, okay.
And we just basically help the customer find the elevator, put them on in the elevator, and the elevator. Actually, if you were accessing the elevator from this level, you can get up to the textbook department. You can also go down to the cellar.
Down into the cellar,
too. We try to keep an access area so that a particular wheelchair can get around the space.
While challenges remain, we were pleased to discover that accessibility is high on the administration's agenda.
Thanks for joining us for this issue of Vantage Point. And next time, we'll be taking a look at smoking and college students. I'm Michael Taylor. Thanks for watching.